Hello, my name is Philippe Girard, a professor in the history department at McNeese State University.
And I'm Yenifer Flores, a history student at McNeese. Welcome to Your Grandma Rocks, where we explore the lives of famous women in history.
Welcome and bienvenue à nos amis francophones. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
On the program today, music and history as we retrace the life of a remarkable woman. She was a World War II hero. She outsmarted the Nazis. She freed her Jewish husband from certain death.
And best of all, she was a history teacher.
Her name was
Lucie Aubrac.
Along the way, we'll sample some songs from her native France.
We'll start nice and slow with Karen Anne's song Winter Garden.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme au Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coère. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long des golfes clairs, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre.
Nous venons d'écouter Jardin d'hiver par Karen Anne. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
I'm Yenifer Flores. Welcome to Your Grandma Rocks,
Today we're exploring the life of the French World War II hero Lucie Aubrac.
which was not her real name. She was born Lucie Bernard, but like all superheroes, she had to adopt a secret identity to hide from the Nazis during World War II.
She was born in the Burgundy region of eastern France.
Isn't that where all the good wines come from?
Exactly. Her parents did come from a family of winemakers, but not the rich types. They eventually moved out of Burgundy to Paris and then to Normandy.
Along the way, her mom and dad held a variety of odd jobs, from gardener to cafe owner.
Lucie was born in 1912, just 2 years before World War I broke out. Her dad, like most Frenchmen from his generation, fought in that conflict and was wounded.
Dad's injury didn't help his struggling career, but eventually Lucie's parents were hired on a large estate back in Burgundy. He worked as a gardener. She was a milkmaid. They didn't earn much, but at least they had found a home.
Lucie was a very smart child, so her parents hoped that she would become a school teacher and have the kind of stable income that they never had. She did pass the exam to become a teacher and earn a full scholarship. All she had to do was attend boarding school for a few years, get her teaching degree, and begin to work.
But Lucie was not just smart. She was also a rebel with a passionate commitment to freedom. Quote, "The idea of being in a boarding school prevented from leaving the building was unacceptable to me," unquote. So she turned down the scholarship and moved to Paris to live on her own.
Needless to say, her parents weren't exactly thrilled. Being a school teacher is considered a very honorable career in France, especially for women of her time. That would have been a big step up for someone who had grown up in poverty. But Lucie always valued her freedom more than anything else.
For a while, she washed dishes in a Parisian restaurant while continuing her studies on her own terms. That meant passing the high school graduation exam on her own.
That exam, the baccalaureate, is a very big deal in France. Passing it on your own without the help of a formal education is extremely hard. But she passed the exam and went on to pursue a history degree at the prestigious University of La Sorbonne.
Why did she pick history?
What kind of a question is that? Because history is hip and interesting, that's why.
Sorry, didn't mean to offend you.
Well, kidding aside, her unusual educational background had not prepared her for college.
She had never studied Latin, for example, and so it took her 3 times to pass the course in ancient history.
Generally, the French educational system is not really designed for atypical students who get back to school at a later age. It's a miracle that Lucie made it through. She even managed to pass the agrégation, a very tough and prestigious teaching exam.
She didn't simply study. This was the 1930s, and Paris was a hotbed of political activism.
She first became involved with the anti-war Quaker organization, and then with the Communist Party.
Wait, she was a communist?
Kind of. She was too independent to accept the rigid discipline of the party, so she was more of a fellow traveler. But she has struggled with poverty all her life. This was the middle of the Great Depression, and she saw communists as the defenders of the working class.
How common was it for a young woman to be active in politics at the time?
Not common at all. Women didn't even have the right to vote in France yet. She was a pass breaker.
Wow. After completing her studies, she finally got a steady job. She was appointed as a high school history teacher in Strasbourg.
Strasbourg, or Strasbourg in English, is in the east of France, in Alsace, right next to Germany.
Alsace also happened to be the province that Hitler wanted to conquer from France. The year was 1939, and World War II was on the horizon.
Before we get to these dark years, let's enjoy a cheery song by the most famous singer in 1930s France. Je suis Philippe Girard. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese. Nous venons d'écouter Y'a de la joie par Charles Trenet.
Today we're retracing the life of the World War II hero, Lucie Aubrac. Before our break, Lucie had finally escaped from a lifetime of poverty to become a history teacher in Strasbourg.
That's where she was introduced to an engineering student named Raymond Samuel. He was wealthy and he was smart. He had just attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. The two fell in love at once.
She was also smart. She obtained a scholarship to go to the US and work on a PhD dissertation. She was supposed to leave for the US on September 5th of 1939, and then history caught up with her.
September 1st of that year, Hitler invaded Poland and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun.
Lucie could have sailed away to a more peaceful life of studying in the U.S., but she would not leave behind the 2 things she loved most, her country and her lover.
So she headed back to Strasbourg, even though Nazi troops were preparing to attack Alsace. And then she married Raymond Samuel.
Remember that he was Jewish. It took a lot of guts to marry him, but Lucie was not the kind of person to be intimidated.
The war did not go well for France. In the spring of 1940, the Nazis overwhelmed the French army and the British army in a matter of weeks.
Lucie's husband, who had been drafted in the French army, was taken as a prisoner of war.
Most French POWs were taken to Germany, where Hitler kept them as hostages for years. But Lucie had other plans.
She managed to find a POW camp where her husband was held. She gave him a drug that would make him sick so that he would be transferred to a hospital. Once he was in the hospital, she gave him civilian clothes and smuggled him out.
After the Nazi invasion, France was split in two. The northern part was under direct German occupation, while the southern part was technically still free under its own government.
So Lucie and her husband headed to the city of Lyon in the southern part so that they could be free. That's where they joined an underground resistance network.
That took a lot of courage. In 1940, most French people were still stunned by the German invasion and simply trying to lie low while waiting to see how events would turn out. The USSR and the US had not joined the war yet, so it looked like the Nazis would occupy France forever. Lucie was among a handful of people standing up to the Nazis.
What exactly did her organization do?
The resistance could take many shapes. Resistance fighters could write and distribute anti-German pamphlets, or they could spy for the British. They could also carry out sabotage operations against the Germans or even assassinate German troops.
I assumed that was all dangerous?
Very dangerous. Members of the resistance were civilians fighting without a uniform, so the Germans considered that they were terrorists who had no rights under the Geneva Conventions. If arrested, they risked being tortured, deported to a concentration camp, or killed.
So she did all that while being a history teacher?
Exactly. And while raising a young boy too. In the midst of all these events, she and her husband had a baby.
Wow.
Wait, that was just the beginning. Her most daring exploits are yet to come.
Time for a musical break?
We'll listen to Le Chant des Partisans. Anna Marley wrote it during World War II in 1941 as a call to arms for the resistance, so it's very topical for our show. It's still performed regularly at official events in France, where it's become a kind of second national anthem after the Marseillaise.
Amis, entends-tu le vol noir des corbeaux sur nos plaines? Amis, entends-tu les cris sourds du pays qu'on enchaîne? Ohé, partisans, ouvriers et paysans, c'est l'alarme. Ce soir, l'ennemi connaîtra le prix du sang et des larmes. Montez de la mine, descendez des collines, camarades. Sortez de la paille, les fusils, la mitraille, les grenades. Ohé, les tueurs à la balle et au couteau, tuez vite. Ohé, saboteur, attention à ton fardeau, dynamite. C'est nous qui brisons les barreaux des prisons pour nos frères. La haine à nos trousses et la faim qui nous pousse la misère. Il y a des pays où les gens au creux des lits font des rêves. Ici, nous vois-tu, nous on marche, nous on tue, nous on crève. Ici, chacun sait ce qu'il veut, ce qu'il fait quand il passe. Ami, si tu tombes, un ami sort de l'ombre à ta place. Demain, du sang noir séchera au grand soleil sur les routes. Sifflez, compagnons, dans la nuit, la liberté nous écoute.
Bonjour à tous and welcome back to Your Grammar Rocks on KBYS. This was the anthem of the French resistance in World War II, le chant des partisans. Je suis Philippe Girard.
I'm Yenifer Flores. Today we're covering the life of the World War II hero, Lucie Aubrac.
Before our break, we had reached the point where she and her Jewish husband joined the resistance to oppose the German occupation of France.
Things in France were bad enough, but the situation took a turn for the worse in 1942 when the Germans occupied the southern part of France, which had been nominally free until then.
As if this wasn't enough, the new chief of the Gestapo in Lyon was the infamous Klaus Barbie, better known as the Butcher of Lyon.
Barbie began to arrest resistance fighters, torture them, and force them to become informants. Then he would arrest even more members of the resistance and start the process again. From that point on, Lucie and her husband were fighting for their lives.
In 1943, Lucie's husband Raymond was arrested along with 8 other people.
Lucie asked the resistance to mount a military operation to free her husband from prison, but higher-ups thought that the operation was much too risky.
Lucie still didn't give up.
She went straight to the French official overseeing the prison and threatened him. If he didn't free her husband, she would make sure that the official was assassinated.
This guy was a collaborator with the Germans, she explained, and therefore a coward. If I spoke louder than him, I was sure to win.
Amazingly, it worked. The official let her husband go.
Then Lucie arranged for the escape of the other 8 resistance fighters who had been captured, along with her husband.
She smuggled special pills to the prisoners to make them sick. Then, when they were transferred to a hospital, she mounted an operation to free them as well.
Remember that she did all that while maintaining her cover as a history teacher and raising her young son.
And being pregnant, she was expecting a second child by then.
She wasn't done yet.
In June of 1943, her husband Raymond was again arrested by the Gestapo.
That incident is very famous in France because one of the people arrested that day was Jean Moulin, the leader of all the resistance groups in France, and a very famous person. Tragically, Jean Moulin was then tortured to death by Klaus Barbie, that infamous leader of the Gestapo in Lyon. Raymond was probably next on the list to be tortured and killed.
Undeterred, Lucie went straight to Barbie and claimed to be an unmarried noblewoman who was expecting a child with Raymond. She simply couldn't have a child out of wedlock, given her aristocratic background. So she begged Klaus Barbie to let Raymond go so that they could marry.
She was pregnant, but the rest of the story obviously was false. She was married and already had a child by him. If Barbie ever figured out that she was lying, she could be arrested and killed too.
The ruse worked, and her husband was taken out of prison into the headquarters of the Gestapo so that he could marry Lucie,
who was already married to him and had a 2-year-old boy with him. All that was just a ploy to get him out of prison.
On the transfer back to the prison, the resistance attacked the German convoy, killed the guards, and freed Raymond.
By that point, life was getting far too dangerous for that couple in France.
Raymond had been in prison 3 times already, and Lucie could only get him out so many times, so they snuck out to England, where their baby girl was born.
The godfather was none other than Charles de Gaulle, the leader of the French army in exile.
By that point, Lucie was a celebrity known for her daring exploits, and she became a leading figure of the French government in exile.
In the meantime, the US had joined the war, as had the USSR, and in 1944 an Allied army landed in Normandy to free France from the Nazis.
Is that an event that people still remember in France?
Oh yes, especially in Normandy where I grew up. So French people's views of the US are kind of complicated.
What do you mean?
Well, French people admire the US for its role in World War II as well as its popular culture and other things. But people on the far left are more hostile because they associate the US with unbridled capitalism.
Isn't that a bit ungrateful? I mean, a lot of Americans died to free France.
That's exactly the point made by a French singer, Michel Sardou, in our next song, which is addressed to radical anti-Americans from the left in the post-war generation.
What does the song say?
Well, the lyrics say that if Americans had not come on D-Day, we'd still be under German occupation. Don't you ever forget that. It's a beautiful song, too.
Si les ricains n'étaient pas là, vous seriez tous en Germanie à parler de je ne sais quoi, à saluer je ne sais qui. Bien sûr les années ont passé, les fusils ont changé de main. Est-ce une raison pour oublier qu'un jour on en a eu besoin? Un gars venu de Géorgie qui se foutait pas mal de toi est venu mourir en Normandie un matin où tu n'y étais pas. Bien sûr les années ont passé, on est devenus des copains à l'amicale du fusillé. On dit qu'ils sont tombés pour rien. Si les ricains n'étaient pas là, vous seriez tous en Germanie à parler de je ne sais quoi, à saluer je ne sais qui.
You're listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS. I'm Yenifer Flores.
Et je suis Philippe Girard. Nous venons d'écouter Les Ricains par Michel Sardou.
Today, we're retracing the life of Lucie Aubrac, French hero of the civilian resistance against the Nazis.
The end of World War II was a triumphant moment for Lucie, who occupied important political positions in the post-war French regime. And best of all, French women like herself finally got the right to vote after World War II.
But it was also a bittersweet moment because the parents of Raymond, her Jewish husband, had both been deported to Auschwitz. That was a stark reminder of what would have happened to him if she had not saved him from captivity 3 times.
She remained politically active thereafter, but her independent streak complicated her career somewhat.
She would have liked to be more involved in the Communist Party, which was the largest party in France after World War II, but communists judged her as a loose cannon and kept her at arm's length.
Fun fact, Ho Chi Minh, the Vietnamese communist, was the godfather of her third child.
Charles de Gaulle and Ho Chi Minh. That's an unusual pair of godparents.
She was definitely a rebel. Her teaching career was also rocky because she was involved in a million causes and could never commit fully to her job.
I bet such an independent woman must have been a difficult worker to manage.
I used to be department head at McNeese, and she's the kind of worker I would not have wanted on the staff. Actually, she and her husband eventually moved overseas, first to Morocco and then to Italy.
It's during that period that she became involved in the anti-colonial struggle.
A lot of colonies were getting their independence at the time, but France refused to let go, especially Algeria, and waged a long and costly war in Algeria in the 1950s. The communists and Charles de Gaulle, who had been on Lucie's side during World War II, initially supported the war in Algeria.
She didn't, so she became a kind of traitor in the eyes of her former allies.
We'll pause again for a song connected to the Algerian conflict. It's entitled The Deserter, and the lyrics encourage young people to reject the draft and refuse to serve.
Wow, talk about controversial lyrics.
The song was actually banned for many years in France, but we're in Louisiana, so we're allowed to play it.
Monsieur le Président, je vous fais une lettre que vous lirez peut-être si vous avez le temps. Je viens de recevoir mes papiers militaires pour partir à la guerre avant mercredi soir. Monsieur le Président, je ne veux pas la fête, je ne suis pas sur terre pour tuer des pauvres gens. C'est pas pour vous fâcher, il faut que je vous dise, ma décision est prise, je m'en vais déserter. Depuis que je suis né, j'ai vu mourir mon père, j'ai vu partir mes frères et pleurer mes enfants. Ma mère a tant souffert qu'elle est dedans sa tombe et se moque des bombes et se moque des vers. Quand j'étais prisonnier, on m'a volé ma femme, on m'a volé mon âme et tout mon cher passé. Demain de bon matin, je fermerai ma porte au nez des années mortes, j'irai sur les chemins.
Bienvenue à tous, nous venons d'écouter Le Déserteur par Boris Vian. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Yenifer Flores. You're listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS, a show about remarkable women from centuries past. Today's woman was indeed remarkable. Lucie Aubrac outsmarted the Nazis during World War II to save the life of her Jewish husband. She was also involved in a variety of anti-war, anti-colonial, and leftist causes at a time when women were largely shut out of politics.
She slipped out of public view in the 1960s and 70s as memories from World War II began to fade.
But she stepped back to the front of the scene in the 1980s when Klaus Barbie, the former head of the Gestapo in Lyon, was extradited from Bolivia and brought to justice.
Barbie was the one who had captured Lucie's husband back in 1943. That day he had also captured the leader of the French resistance, Jean Moulin, whom he had later tortured to death.
Barbie was sentenced to life in prison for crimes against humanity, but he managed to hurt Lucie and Raymond Aubrac one last time. He claimed that Raymond had been an informant of the Gestapo and was the one who had betrayed Jean Moulin.
That accusation led to many controversies in the 1990s on the wartime role of Lucie and Raymond Aubrac. They eventually managed to prove their innocence and restore their reputation.
In 1996, she received the Legion of Honor, France's most prestigious medal.
And when she died in 2007 at the age of 94, the president and the prime minister attended a state funeral in her honor.
Many people are now calling for her to be interred in the Pantheon, a monument dedicated to France's great men.
She surely deserves it.
She's been portrayed in a variety of movies, including the great classic Army of Shadows.
Fun fact, Simone Signoret, the actress who plays Lucie Aubrac in that movie, had once been the student of Lucie Aubrac back when she was a history teacher.
What a life! We're glad we could share it with you.
Quelle vie incroyable, en effet.
This program was funded by a Julie Hartner Grant for Women in the Humanities. For more information on how to help finance fellowships at McNeese, contact the foundation at 337-475-5588.
Keep the money coming. This program was also sponsored by the History Department at McNeese. If you want to apply for a degree in history like my co-host Yenifer Flores, contact the McNeese Admissions Office at 337-475-5504.
And if you're a history student at McNeese, I encourage you to join Phi Alpha Theta, the Honor Society for History Students. Thank you and goodbye.
Merci et au revoir. We will leave you with a kind of a World War II song. It's called Enola Gay by OMD.